Pam Bondi walked into that congressional hearing with evidence nobody knew existed. What happened in the next 30 seconds left Kash Patel completely speechless and may change the future of American politics forever. Nobody expected anything special that morning. The hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. sharp inside room 2141 of the Rayburn House Office Building in Washington, D.C. A Tuesday with overcast skies and light drizzle outside, the kind of day that made everything feel a little heavier. Inside the committee room, members began to trickle in, most wearing that expression of tired routine, half focused, half waiting for the day to be over. Pam Bondi walked in quietly, reviewing notes on a slim legal pad. Her team had prepped for days, double-checked citations, and organized documents with surgical precision. She didn't say much. She didn't need to. Her eyes did all the talking, but the moment Bondi pulled out that one document, everything changed. Kash Patel's face went from confident to panicked in seconds. The evidence she had in her hands would expose years of deception that no one had been able to prove until now. If you're watching this story unfold, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss any updates on this explosive revelation that's shaking Washington to its core. For months, Kash Patel had been dominating headlines with bold claims that nobody could verify. The media amplified every statement without question. Major networks gave him primetime slots to repeat his narrative without challenge. He had built a reputation as a powerful insider, someone who knew where all the bodies were buried in Washington. But Pam Bondi, former Attorney General of Florida, had been quietly gathering evidence that would expose everything. With her methodical, prosecutor's mindset, she had been connecting dots that others missed, following paper trails that everyone else ignored. While Patel made noise on television, Bondi built a case in silence. Kash Patel sat at the witness table looking relaxed. His jacket was perfectly tailored, his tie a shade too bold for the room. He leaned back in his chair, chatting casually with his attorney, smirking at something said off mic. On the desk before him, his nameplate gleamed under the LED lights. As people settled in, cameras from C-SPAN and several news outlets adjusted. Focus. Microphones blinked red. Chairs creaked. There was that charged silence before things officially began. The kind you only notice when you're looking for it. Committee Chairman Dupont opened the floor, running through the expected agenda. Patel was here to answer questions about internal communications during a high-profile intelligence review that had turned heads last year. Nothing explosive on the schedule, just an appearance to clarify inconsistencies from prior testimony, or so everyone thought. The stakes couldn't have been higher. This wasn't just about one man's credibility. It was about the integrity of America's intelligence community, about whether powerful figures could operate above the rules, about whether the truth still mattered in Washington. The first few exchanges were standard dates, timelines, procedural clarifications. Patel answered with confidence, speaking in clipped lawyer-approved phrases. Every word sounded rehearsed, like someone who had practiced his lines for days. Bondi's turn came about 30 minutes in. The chairman gave a short nod in her direction, and she adjusted her mic. "Mr. Patel," she said, her tone even, "in your last appearance, before this committee, you testified that you had no written communication with Mr. Devlin regarding the march. 14th briefing, correct?" Patel glanced sideways. "That's correct," he replied, nodding once. "I believe that's what I stated." Bondi didn't look up from her notes. She reached down, flipped a tab, and slowly pulled a paper from a small folder. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't highlighted. Just plain cold ink on white paper. "I am entering into the record a memo dated March 13th, she said, addressed from your personal email to Mr. Devlin's private account. It references verbatim details of that very same March 14th briefing." For a second, you could hear someone shift in their chair behind the witness row. Patel blinked. "That's not possible," he said flatly. "That email must be misattributed." But Bondi kept reading, quoting directly. Every line hit like a subtle jab. The email was detailed, time-stamped, and CC'd to 2 other staffers. Patel's signature was at the bottom. As tension in the room rose, Chairman DuPont interrupted, asking for clarification. Patel leaned toward his mic, stumbling a little, trying to reframe the question, but his rhythm was broken. Bondi hadn't raised her voice once. She didn't need to. Every word had weight. "I'll move to my next question," she said. "But this is just one of several discrepancies we've identified." Before she could continue, Patel raised his hand, his voice firmer this time. Something had clearly shifted in his tone. "With all due respect, Representative," he said. The word respect laced with irritation. "That email doesn't reflect what actually happened. There's context you're missing." Bondi didn't blink. "Then perhaps you can provide that context now," she said, turning the page in her folder with slow, deliberate calm. Patel leaned closer to his mic. "If someone on my team sent that draft and it was misattributed to me, you signed it, Bondi. Cut in still calm. The signature line matches 3 others we've archived from the same address, same font, same metadata. Would you like me to read those into the record as well?" A murmur moved through the gallery. For the first time, Patel looked uncertain. His jaw tightened and he shifted in his seat. "I don't recall signing that," he said quickly. "Good thing we don't rely on memory alone," Bondi replied. Patel's attorney placed a firm hand on his arm under the table. Just a slight squeeze, a silent warning. "Stop talking." Bondi's aide passed her another paper, this time printed in color. "This is a screenshot of your encrypted text exchange with Mr. Devlin," she said, raising the document slightly. "The, day after the memo, you referred to it directly. Quote, that memo's locked, clean, and off the radar, just like we said. Would you like to explain what that means?" Patel laughed once, short, nervous. "You're seriously bringing screenshots now." Bondi's face didn't move. "Do you dispute the content?" "No. I'm saying you're trying to make a political spectacle out of private, informal back-and-forths." "They were about a federal intelligence briefing," she said plainly, "not a lunch order." The room tensed. Even committee members who had been half scrolling on their phones were now locked in. Chairman DuPont adjusted his glasses and glanced toward Patel's lawyer, who still hadn't spoken. The chairman cleared his throat. "Mr. Patel, you may answer the question or invoke your Fifth Amendment rights, but I'll remind you this committee takes perjury seriously." The word perjury sat in the air like smoke after a spark. Patel clenched his jaw. "There's no perjury," he said through gritted teeth. "This is a smear job, and frankly, I'm not going to sit here while you're not sitting here because we want to play games." Bondi said, her tone flat. "You're here because something doesn't add up, and Americans deserve clarity." Her words cut clean, measured, not aggressive. Patel glanced at the chairman, then down at the table. "I've had enough of this," Patel said suddenly, louder than before. "You've clearly made up your mind, and I'm not going to sit here while you cherry-pick private conversations for the sake of your own narrative." He stood again, not storming this time, just cold, deliberate. His lawyer followed frantically, gathering papers. The chairman called for order, his gavel striking 3 times. "Mr. Patel, you are under oath and obligation to remain until dismissed by this committee." But Patel kept walking right out of the room, pushing past a junior staffer who stumbled, backward. In the hallway just outside room 2141, reporters scrambled to position themselves. Cameras flashed as Patel stormed through the corridor, his lawyer trailing behind him, hissing urgent warnings that the microphones caught in fragments. Worst possible move and contempt charges. Inside the hearing room, a strange kind of silence fell. Not tense, not relaxed, just confused. He wasn't technically allowed to leave. The chairman had just said so. Yet there he was, coat over his shoulder, pushing through. The exit like it was a bad podcast he didn't want to finish. For about 5 seconds, no one moved. Then a flurry of motion erupted. Staffers whispered urgently to each other. Reporters reached for their phones. Someone from CNN stepped out to call the news desk. A local anchor from Sacramento was already doing a live hit from the hallway with one AirPod in and her heels off. As this chaos unfolded, one of Bondi's aides quietly slid a new folder across the table. When she opened it, her face changed, still composed, but with something tighter in the jaw, something resolved. The entire hearing was about to take a darker turn. "We're going to pause here," Bondi said, her voice cutting through the commotion. "Not because we want to play games, but because there's one more document I need to enter into the record." She nodded to her aide, who tapped a keyboard. On the screen behind them appeared a screenshot, black background, white font, a text chain. "Between Patel and someone saved in his phone as W staff line." The message read, "Make sure we don't mention it in email. If she asks, deny it. She won't follow up." The room fell completely silent. Even the photographers stopped clicking their shutters. One committee member leaned forward, adjusting his glasses as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "This message," Bondi continued, "was sent approximately 2 hours after Mr. Patel's sworn testimony last December, where he stated under oath that all communications regarding the security protocol were properly documented through official channels outside." In the hallway, Patel's attorney was pacing, 2 assistants flanking him, one on the phone, one tapping furiously at a laptop. "He has to come back," the attorney muttered. "He walks out like that on live TV, it's bad enough. But if she's got more, he needs to get ahead of it. Where is he now?" One assistant asked, waiting in a car 2 blocks away. "Says he needs a minute." "He doesn't have a minute," the assistant snapped, looking at her phone. "It's already trending." Inside the hearing room, Chairman Dupont conferred quietly with the committee, counsel. After a brief exchange, he addressed the room. "This committee will recess for 15 minutes to allow Mr. Patel to return. His counsel has been informed that failure to return could result in contempt proceedings. For the next 15 minutes, the speculation in the room and online reached fever pitch. Patel walkout started trending within minutes. Cable news anchors were scrambling to get legal analysts on air. Phones throughout the building buzzed with notifications. Exactly 14 minutes later, Patel returned. He didn't storm in this time. No theatrics, just a quiet entrance through the side door. His coat was off, his expression hollowed out. No smirk, no snide remarks, just the look of someone who had been told behind closed doors that the story had already left his hands and was now in the court of public opinion. Chairman Dupont tapped his gavel 3 times. "We resume today's hearing, with additional evidence submitted by Representative Bondi. Proceed." Bondi adjusted her microphone, her movements deliberate, unhurried. "What you are about to hear was recovered from an internal training session held over Zoom last year. Mr. Patel, while you were serving as a senior advisor, you hosted this meeting. During this session, you spoke about internal practices for communication and protocol. Is that correct?" Patel didn't answer. His eyes darted to his lawyer, who nodded almost imperceptibly. The chairman spoke again, his voice firmer. "Mr. Patel, please respond to the question." Patel's voice was flat, almost resigned. "If you say it's from a session, I won't deny it." "Good," Bondi said, "because we clipped a specific portion. It lasts 45 seconds. She nodded to her aide. The room darkened slightly as the audio clip began to play. Patel's voice filled the space, recorded, casual, and far more confident than the man now sitting silently under the lights. "Keep comms clean. If you've got anything that could even look like it crosses the line, send it through Signal. Never email. And if anyone asks later, deny knowledge unless you're backed into a corner." A gasp rippled through the room. Not a dramatic one, but the kind you hear when people suddenly realize they've seen the tip of the iceberg, and not the depth. Committee members exchanged glances. A woman in the back row covered her mouth with her hand. Bondi paused, letting the words land. Her aide clicked again. Another snippet played. We're not writing this stuff down. That's how people get pulled into hearings. You want cover? Use private channels. You want risk? Go formal? Your choice. The audio quality was crystal clear. There was no ambiguity, no room for denial. In the hallway, a young intern watching from a screen in an adjacent room muttered, "Holy, she's got him cold." Patel looked down. All fight gone from his body. His shoulders slumped forward. His lawyer whispered something urgently in his ear, but he didn't respond, didn't even acknowledge the words. For the first time, he looked like someone who realized the game was over. Chairman DuPont leaned forward, his expression grave. "Mr. Patel, that voice, is it yours?" Patel swallowed hard, the motion visible even from across the room. "Yes," he said quietly, the word barely reaching the microphone. "You retract any of those statements?" There was a long pause. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Patel's lawyer placed a hand on his client's arm, but Patel shook it off. "No." The single word landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples through the hearing room. Several phones lit up as staffers rushed to text the admission to their bosses or reporters. Bondi leaned in, her voice steady, but with an unmistakable edge of moral certainty. "Then let the record show these were not just offhand remarks. These were instructions from someone with clearance, from someone who knew better, someone who understood exactly what they were doing when they systematically undermined transparency, requirements that exist to protect our democratic institutions." Patel said nothing. His eyes, once sharp and challenging, now stared blankly at the table before him. "Would you care to explain why you gave these instructions?" Bondi pressed not aggressively, but persistently. After a moment, Patel looked up. "I was following a playbook," he said, his voice hollow. "One we all understood. One that worked." A ripple moved through the room. Bondi's fingers tensed around her. "Pen." "And who is we, Mr. Patel?" she asked. Patel didn't respond right away. His lawyer leaned in and whispered something, but Patel seemed beyond caring about legal consequences. "Now the policy team," he said finally. "At least 5 of us. And were you instructed to keep those communications off the record?" His voice dropped so low the microphone barely picked it up. "Yes." "By whom?" He shook his head slightly. "I'd rather not say here." Bondi didn't push. Not yet. But the hearing room had changed completely. The energy had shifted from spectacle to consequence. Outside, cable news anchors were visibly stunned on live TV. Headlines had already updated. Patel admits, "We followed a playbook to hide communications." The chairman gave again, his face grim. "This hearing will enter an extended review phase. All testimony will be forwarded to the Oversight Committee, and legal counsel will coordinate with the Department of Justice regarding potential perjury and obstruction charges." And just like that, the story shifted from scandal to criminal investigation. Within hours, the hearing clips went viral. News trucks fired up their satellite feeds. Inside the Capitol, Bondi leaned toward her aide, Brenda. "We weren't even looking for that clip," she whispered. It came in anonymously. Brenda blinked. "Someone sent it." "No," Bondi replied. "Someone wanted it found. But that was the part that changed everything, because whoever leaked the audio knew the storm it would cause and sent it anyway. It started 2 weeks earlier in a building just 4 blocks away from the Capitol. An aide named Melinda Cash, 28, sharp-eyed, always 2 steps ahead, had been working in the basement archive of the Intelligence Subcommittee staff wing. Her job wasn't glamorous. Mostly, it involved cross-referencing old transcripts, flagging, duplicate entries, and refiling years of clutter that no one else wanted to touch. But she had a habit. She listened. One afternoon, she had overheard 2 staffers talking about a ghost drive, a pocket-sized USB no one could officially admit existed. They joked about it in passing. One of them even laughed. But Melinda didn't laugh. She noted the name W staff line. She went back through older entries, tracing emails where that code name popped up in metadata. They weren't frequent, barely, more than 4, but they all pointed to one inbox, Patel's. That was the thread. She tugged, and when she did, the whole sleeve came apart. Melinda didn't tell anyone. Not her supervisor, not her roommate. She just compiled what she could, quietly verified it, and placed a printout inside an unmarked envelope. It sat in her apartment for 4 days before she finally walked into Representative Bondi's district office on her day off and handed it to a man sitting at the front desk. All she said was, "Give this to her, no one else." As the media tore through every second of the hearing, as Patel's name trended next to phrases like cover-up and perjury, something else was happening beneath the surface. Quietly, deliberately, pieces were moving that most people would never see. In a small apartment in D.C., Melinda Cash returned to her quiet routine, still sorting files, still walking past people who had no idea what she'd done. She didn't want recognition, didn't care about cameras. What she wanted was for people to do their job right. That, in the end, was what mattered. As for Patel, he went quiet. No posts, no interviews. His lawyer issued a generic statement about misunderstandings and overstated interpretations, but no one paid it much attention. There was talk he might face charges. Maybe he would, maybe he wouldn't. But the damage wasn't in what happened to him. It was in what he exposed. That people in power still count on most folks not paying attention. Still think no one will follow. The paper trail. Still assume that if you speak long enough, loud enough, and confidently enough, you can outrun the truth. But this time, the truth caught up. And it wasn't angry. It wasn't screaming. It just sat there, quiet, documented, time-stamped. In the White House, officials scrambled to distance themselves from Patel. He was never part of the inner circle. One senior aide told reporters off the record. He exaggerated his role. On Capitol Hill, both parties tried spinning the revelations to their advantage. Republicans pointed to procedural concerns about how the evidence was obtained. Democrats focused on the substance of what was revealed. But behind closed doors, members of both parties were checking their own digital footprints, deleting old texts, scrubbing accounts. If they got Patel, they could get anyone, one congressman was overheard saying to an aide. At the Department of Justice, a special team was quietly assembled to review the evidence and determine if criminal charges were warranted. Legal experts on television debated the distinctions between unethical behavior and illegal actions, between poor judgment and criminal intent. But in living rooms across America, those distinctions hardly mattered. What people saw was simple. Someone in power got caught, exposed, unmasked. The clip of Patel saying, "Deny knowledge unless you're backed into a corner," became a meme shared. Thousands of times with captions like, "Government transparency and action, and this is why we don't trust them." 3 days after the hearing, Bondi held a press conference. She didn't gloat or grandstand. When asked about her methodical approach, she simply said, "The truth doesn't need theatrics. It just needs to be heard. For every Patel out there, there's someone like Bondi. And behind her, someone like Melinda. And behind both of them, whether in classrooms, homes, or scrolling through phones late at night, are people who still care enough to listen, ask, and press. That's where the real change starts. Not in shouting someone down, but in asking the question they thought you'd never dare to ask. A month later, 3 more officials resigned as the investigation widened. Text messages revealed a network of coordinated efforts to keep certain communications official channels. The playbook Patel mentioned turned out to be an actual document, a 12-page guide titled Communication Security Protocols that laid out exactly how to avoid oversight. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The very methods designed to hide information became the evidence that exposed everything. In her office, Bondi pinned a note to her bulletin board, a quote from Justice Louis Brandeis. "Sunlight is said to be the best of disinfectants." Next to it was a simple sticky note with a number 17. The number of additional officials now under investigation because of what started with one email, one text, one audio clip. So, if this story made you think even just for a second about power, accountability, and truth in our democracy, subscribe to this channel, because we're not done watching and we're definitely not done asking the questions that need to be asked. The powerful may think they're beyond reach, but as Kash Patel learned, when Pam Bondi pulled out those documents, no one is above the truth forever.